So we have a wonderful panel for you tonight. We have Nola Force. Nola began a career in real estate as a licensed agent in San Francisco in 1970. At that time, selling homes was acceptable, but joining the investment or commercial divisions was not. As she became experienced in real property management as well as sales, sexual advances and outright groping by her broker were commonplace, a laughable subject to the men she worked for. Moving into syndication and real estate development after her relocation here to Santa Barbara brought participation in construction and another story in sexual harassment and discrimination. The year was 1978, and she was 36 years old, divorced, and sole provider for herself and her 2 daughters. Since then, wonderful things have happened, and these days she is an advisor, coach, consultant, and mediator. And what a great story. You can't keep a good woman down, right? Welcome, Nola Force.
My name is Nola, as I was introduced. My background chosen in my mid-20s was real estate. It was a profession which I felt would allow me to be a parent to my 2 daughters and set my own time schedule. I was married at the time, and I remember starting in San Francisco, the group of people I chose to represent as buyers were primarily Asian, and most of them ran restaurants. So I would wait till my husband got home from work and then I'd go to work. And most of my clients would be getting off work around 9 o'clock, and I'd sit down with them and show them the properties, and the next day we would go see them. And I learned how to cook some pretty good Asian dishes along the way. From there, it was an interesting experience of mine to join a large company. It was Grubb & Ellis out of the Bay Area. And I was already in the habit of selling apartment houses. But they said to me, no, you can't do that. That's the men's division. So I said to them at the time, well, which office would you like me to go into? And they said Lakeshore. And so I went out to Lakeshore and I made a home for myself with an office. And then I started selling apartment houses. So one of the things I learned about being a woman is when I signed up the listings, which of course all listings belong to the broker, I made a provision that Nola had to be the listing agent or the contract was not enforceable. So it did get me into that area. What I want to say about that and the way I started was certain things came up to me that I was really aware of. One of them was age. I was only in my mid-20s, so I pulled my hair up into a chignon and put on a trench coat and wore a slouch hat. And I knew I had reached my goal when a client said to me, do you have children, Nola? I said, yes, I have one 4 and I have one 8. My goodness, you started late. So not only was it about being a woman, it was about being, how old was I? How much could they trust me? And I remember a doctor client said to me, well, I can't list my home with you, Nola, because I have my wife's an agent and my sister-in-law's an agent and my cousin's an agent. And I said, yeah, but can you tell them all what you need to tell them when they're not doing their job? And he said, no. And I said, you can tell me. So he listed with me. When I came to Santa Barbara, I wasn't very happy selling homes. I never was. And I wanted to get into the building trades. So one of the things I found when I looked at the housing market and the apartments here in this area was that I didn't like the way they were designed. So I said, well, let's team up with contractors and a good architect and let's build product. Well, that was another experience for me because most of the women in the area were not doing very much building. And I had a difficult time getting the projects going until I learned that you have to control the money to make the projects work. So I learned how to syndicate. And from syndication, which is a simple point of putting people's money together, usually 10 or less, you could do quite a few things that you wanted to do. Along the line, I'd go into a meeting, and I had a male secretary at the time. And as we walked into the meeting, someone would stand and approach him and say, my name at that time was Evans, they'd say, "Thank you, Mr. Evans, for coming," and then totally ignored me. That was normal, that was normal. So the way I think I was reacting through my 30s and 40s was taking everything very personally. To me, it was an affront to me as a person. When I joined a corporation to learn how to syndicate here in Santa Barbara, I was running their property management company at the time, and they gave me a promotion. And I said, wow, this is great, I get to be director of marketing. I walk into an all-male director meeting, and I'm told I am the only woman there because they have to have a woman on the board. Not that I was good at it or they chose me for another reason. So that was a little bit difficult from the ego point of view. So I decided, what did I have to do? Most of us women that were successful in our profession, I had to outdo everybody else. So I learned to raise money faster and better and work 7 days a week and all those things that harm families. It doesn't help when you've got the family at home. And it's difficult. I found generationally, my parents weren't supportive because I should be a file clerk and let my husband earn the income instead of being a single mom with 2 children. So all of this came about to bring me into a field where I stayed pretty much under the radar here in Santa Barbara from 1977 when I opened my first company to about 1990. And I had a passion for building passive solar, which at that time, nobody was doing that I could find. The banks didn't want to do it because they did not understand it. And it simply means building things with the temperature and the environment in which you find yourself. This building was built passive solar. You can tell from the overhangs and the skylights that open. And the placement of the walkways, they heat in the winter, they cool in the summer. And I was pretty interested with what I was doing at the time. But the market was difficult then too. Those of us that went through the 80s, actually the late 70s, my interest rate jumped from 7.5% to almost 20% on construction loans. And it took the profit out of whatever we were doing in spec building. So I did my first really big subdivision in Santa Barbara, and I was wondering why it went together so easy. And I'm going to kind of conclude with this. And after I had formed a group to buy it with me, and I became the managing general partner, the seller said, "Okay, Nola, we chose you because you're probably a dumb broad. And if you don't do the job right, we can foreclose on you, and there's a tax advantage." All I'm going to leave you with is I did finish the subdivision. It was successful. And it's all passive solar.